Hello, and welcome to Mapping the College Audition. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA. That's Musical Theater College Auditions. Check us out at mtca.com. And today we've got James Beaudry from the University at Buffalo. For newer listeners, this is another one of our college deep dive episodes where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. And you may notice I said the University at Buffalo, which is the State University of New York at Buffalo, which unfortunately you'll hear me many times in the interview refer to as SUNY Buffalo. That is how I've personally always heard it colloquially, and I've referred to all of the SUNY schools, whether it's SUNY Purchase or SUNY Cortland, whatever it is. But James very kindly reached out to me after the interview to make sure that it was very perfectly clear that they preferred to be labeled as University at Buffalo, which I believe is how we'll have this podcast labeled if we've done our druthers. And if we have our druthers, I think so what I mean there. And I think it's more important to them in the way it's written because of the confusion with Buffalo State, which is a potential confusion. This is not Buffalo State. This is University at Buffalo. I also think they're kind of okay with being colloquially referred to as SUNY Buffalo, but I don't know. They didn't say that, so I want to be careful. Henceforth, you will not hear me say that nickname of SUNY Buffalo again, except, of course, for the 15 times you're going to hear it in the interview itself, which was, of course, previously recorded. We do, of course, believe in calling people what they want to be called here at MTCA, and University at Buffalo, U Buffalo, is what we're going to call this school. Now, just don't get me started on Carnegie Mellon versus Carnegie Mellon. Any Pittsburgher, they're going to have an opinion. All right, here we are. We're in late September. It's been a super busy month full of events, and the next couple months is just full. You cannot throw a rock without hitting a weekend MTCA event somewhere, whether that's here in New York City, in Pittsburgh, in Chicago, LA, all these amazing things. We did just have a great mock audition last weekend as I record this, and then next weekend we have another mock audition, and the weekend after that we have another mock audition, and then we head off to Pittsburgh Unified, both in person and virtual. Then our fall master classes, then another mock. It just doesn't stop. So much is happening. We got some busy students, we got some busy coaches. And for our students, alongside those events, so many of you are in the thick of pre-screen season, right? And it is really thrilling. I mean, I hear it from the coaches all of the time, every time we interact, of all these successful recordings that are happening, with many, of course, planned in the coming weeks. Many of our students have not finished recording their pre-screens at this point, right? But it is really exciting when our students feel like the work that they've been putting in, that some of them for over a year they've been putting that work in, to be rewarded in a successful recording, which is not too stressful, right? It's never going to be completely stress-free. It's never going to be a completely casual thing, with how much you're preparing and all the hard work you're putting in. But I'll just say that hard work really does pay off at this time of year, in that hopefully the experience is a little bit more easeful. And then even more importantly, we're able to see that flexible, joyful work that so many of the schools are looking for. And we're going to talk about it a bit in this episode. How do you see flexibility in the body, just in who the human being is who walks in the room? Some of that comes from not being wound so tight because you're so stressed about the pre-screens. I will say, if you aren't going to be in New York City or Pittsburgh or Chicago or LA or any of the wonderful places that we're going to be accruing all of these airline miles in the next couple weeks and months, but if you're still looking to get involved with MTCA, maybe you don't live near one of those cities, don't miss out on all of the webinars we got coming up for you in the next month as well. We have a class of 2027 webinar tomorrow night. That's Thursday night. But then we've got 3 in October. One, this for the class of 2026, that is. 3 in October, one of our regularly scheduled monthly webinars, and then a bonus one on vocal health, and another one that is a parent panel. Both of those latter two are with me, which of course I know is a great extra incentive for all of you. All of that information and all those dates, I'm not going to read them all out to you, but all of those are available at mtca.com. And whether you're looking to meet us for the first time, if you haven't yet reached out to us, it's a great place to get started, mtca.com. Or if you're a student and you go, I'm looking to maybe add on a webinar, I want to check back in. It's been a little while since I've done an MTCA event. mtca.com is the place to be. So yes, let's get to it. This interview with James Beaudry from the University at Buffalo. Well, we are so excited to welcome James Beaudry from SUNY Buffalo. James is a BA in theater from the College of Worcester, trained as an actor and director with Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute, and also as an MFA in dance performance and choreography from Mills College. A distinguished career as a director and choreographer. Also done some cool stuff like a producing artistic director of Timberlake Playhouse and Clinton area Showboat Theater, as well as the company manager of New York Stage and Film. We'll talk a little about that. Currently, he is assistant professor of musical theater and director of undergraduate studies for SUNY Buffalo's Department of Theater and Dance, which is located in Buffalo, New York. They take classes of about 20 to 30. They have a BFA in MT, a BFA in acting, a BFA in dance, as well as BAs in theater and dance. James, welcome on the pod. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
I gave you that short little bio, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey to SUNY Buffalo. Maybe especially, tell me as much fun facts, tidbits, whatever you want to give me in there. But especially as someone who, we have a lot of multi-hyphenates on the show of actor, director, choreographers. But you also, across the artistic boundary and being a company manager. I'd love to hear kind of all about your history in theater.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it started when I was, in high school applying to colleges and not knowing where I wanted to focus. So I went to a BA program where I was able to do a little bit of everything. And I've kind of sustained that throughout my career.
Yeah.
So I went to grad school for an MFA in dance, always intending to come back to music theater because my favorite choreographers all came from the dance world. And that's, that still happens today. Most of the people working on Broadway are coming from a concert dance background, not necessarily up through the ranks of, dance captain, associate, that way.
Totally. You're talking about like high level Broadway choreographers.
Yeah, like, Sonia Taya, etc. Yeah, and so I always wanted to. I realized I wanted to direct and choreograph at quite a young age, and so I wanted to know as much as I could about all of those things. I was very fortunate. I started doing summer stock when I was in college, and that just led to opportunities pretty young to start choreographing and directing because I was building a network. And then I was offered in my late 20s, I was offered a position as an artistic director and jumped at it.
And how does that happen? I'm just a little curious, and I promise we'll get to SUNY Buffalo, but like whenever that happens to someone young, I'm like, how are you getting a 20-something artistic director offer? This seems like it only happens to 70-year-olds.
Yeah. And I always tell people like, how did you get that job? I'm like, I had to earn the job. But I was working on some new projects, and it was like 2006 through 9 when like New York Music Theater Festival was really in its prime. There was a lot of exciting new work happening in New York that I was involved in on several projects. And I got a lot of hands-on producing experience that way. So I was able to take that and match it with sort of the summer stock work I had been doing, and really understand the big picture and the administrative side of things in a way that I think people don't get access to unless you choose that.
Yep. No, it's the reason I sort of throw it out there is the interesting thing of the BA versus the BFA. To talk about what some of the more intensive training you get at BFA, but some of the value we often talk about BAs is that you can get that more holistic understanding of all the different areas.
It's true. And my acting training, I think I was able to move into the director choreographer position more than what does the show look like, but also working directly with actors and getting solid, strong performances out of them. And so I had done a lot of projects at Timberlake, and their artistic director was leaving and let me know and sort of brought me in as an associate for a couple of years. And so I was able to move into that position, which was really kind of a dream come true. And then moving forward 10 years, you're in your late 30s, 40s on the horizon, and you're like, okay, it's this forever or it's time to move on, and I had done, 180 shows or something there.
That's enough shows. That's enough shows.
12 shows a year over a long time. So I was burnt out, and I had moved to Chicago to take over Timberlake from New York City, and I missed New York City, so I went back, and then I got the company management position with New York Stage and Film. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep doing the creative side. It's exhausting, and after a while, you're like, do I have another wedding singer in me? You know what I mean? And so I was really fortunate. Joanna Felser was the artistic director at New York Stage and Film, and they brought me in for a season there because I excel at the administrative side of things. And that was great for a couple of years, but I don't love the administrative side as much as I love the creative side.
And then how did you make your way to SUNY Buffalo?
So COVID hit, and everything changed. And people had told me, you should teach. You have an MFA. you should do all of these things. And so I really started to consider it. And I looked at what jobs were out there and what jobs were in cities, because I knew I didn't want to live in the middle of nowhere.
Hmm.
And coincidentally, my mother's an alum of this school, so I was somewhat familiar with it. And
Uh-huh.
it was the first interview I got, and it was the first job I got.
Hell yeah, one
So
for one. We love
yeah.
it. All right, well, so tell me a little bit. Let's pivot to SUNY Buffalo in terms of, I'd love to hear from your experience of like what is the program at SUNY Buffalo, and what are the students like? If I sort of describe what a SUNY Buffalo student is, what would be the ethos, or what sort of how would you define a SUNY Buffalo kid?
I think they're all just a little bit outside of the box in a good way.
Hmm.
They tend to have multiple interests. We're in the College of Arts and Sciences, so we have the opportunity to do a really rigorous BFA program
Uh-huh.
and something else, um, to be a fully rounded person, and parents love that as well. Um, there's a really strong tradition of acting training here. One of the reasons I like this school is because I related to the dance, the strong dance program, the strong acting program, and a musical theater program that had both faculty members leave in the same year due to
Uh-huh.
various circumstances. So there was this opportunity to kind of look at what is this program and where can we go with it, but knowing
Yep.
that we have really strong strengths on either side of us from acting and dance. And so now I'm in my fourth year, and we're really looking at like, how can we serve the students across their interests? If they want to be a triple threat, great. If they want to really focus on acting and song, fine. If they want to be a dancer with singing,
Yep.
that's an option as well. So we really have a wide range of skill sets across our student body.
I love it. Let's get right into that. So I'd love to hear kind of what the curriculum, especially what the curriculum is now, but
Mhm.
what are the changes you've made in the last 4 years, and if there are the other adjustments you think you might be making as you continue. What does the curriculum look like for the musical theater student, and then we also can talk acting and dance a little bit, but especially for the musical theater student.
Sure. So music theater, they start all of our BFA actors and music theater students start together in the acting classes.
Yep.
Um, so they're starting with music theory and voice lessons. That's for the first year, score analysis, all of that. That's that plus acting plus 2 to 4 dance classes, is sort of their first year.
Yep.
There's one class, pretty much one class every semester as part of the like core curriculum for the university. But other than that, they're in our building.
Yep.
Um, in sophomore year, we get into acting the song as they're in their third level of acting class. So we have music theater rep one. So we're dealing with both like the literature of music theater through
Hmm.
eras, so that they're really understanding how the composition of musicals evolved and how the acting techniques evolved with that.
Yep.
There's 2 levels of that. And then second semester, sophomore year, they're also in music theater workshop, which is our industry business class, which is early, but that's something when I was running Timberlake, I would audition at a lot of universities. I would go to
Hmm.
schools. So, particularly like Vicky Bussert when she was at Baldwin Wallace and Jay Burko at Western Michigan were very helpful to me to sort of see the reasons why their curricula were set up the way they
Yep.
are. And so I moved that to sophomore year so that our students are learning those skills to start auditioning for summer stocks
Yep.
well, and not
Yep.
waiting till senior year.
Yep. It's
Um,
very smart.
then there's a music theater history component, there's a music theater scene study class, and I'm forgetting one other music theater core thing, but it will come to me at some
Well,
point.
and this doesn't have to be complete written. Hopefully, there's somewhere a curriculum they can look at
Yeah,
if they want
it's
the
all on
full
the
full
website.
rundown. But it's really helpful to hear some of these specifics. What about you mentioned sort of the actors and the MTs start together?
Mhm.
How does that membrane work for the dance majors? Are MTs taking with dance majors? Are dance majors able to take MT classes? Same
So
thing with actors if they want MT classes. How does that work kind of across
this
the
is the
three
big
majors?
change that we've made working with the dance faculty. The dance classes, the dance major classes are only for dance majors.
Yep.
If there are available spots, and there always are, music theater students and dance minors can audition to be placed in those classes.
Yep.
Um, we have now also, for the first year this year, ballet placement. All students start with ballet and tap in year one, um, so that they can progress if they are passionate about one or the other. They can progress to higher levels faster.
Yep.
Um, we are doing placement in that because we have 3 sections of ballet. So
Yep.
even if you're not in the dance major class, but you come in with 5 years of experience, you will be pooled with people at a similar level, and then people
Yeah.
who are true beginners will have their own section.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, we're starting all of that literally tomorrow. So I'm really excited about that. And then we also have this year a double major option. If you are accepted to both the dance program and the
Uh-huh.
music theater program, you can finish a BA in dance and a BFA in music theater in 4 years.
Super
It
cool.
took some like moving things around to make that fit because
Yep.
it's a lot of classes. But I
That's
feel
similar
really
to other programs, sort of like musical theater dance degree or whatever is what you
basically, yeah. Well,
right.
we were looking at that, and to do a combined degree like that, we'd actually have to cut more courses. So they have
Uh-huh.
more access by keeping it as two separate
As
degrees.
a double major.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, while we're on the double majors and the minors of it all, just talk to me about generally the academics at SUNY Buffalo. So what first I'd love to hear, like, as a general BFA, let's say I'm a BFA MT
Mhm.
standard major, whatever that is, if I'm not doing another thing, how many academic classes am I getting? What percentage of my time am I spending acting, singing, and dancing versus doing other academic stuff? And then what possibilities are there for minors or double majors outside of the acting, singing, and dancing world?
Sure. Yeah, most of our students are taking 18 to 20 credits a semester. 19 is like the max, but you can apply for more credits.
Hmm.
Within that, 1 to 2 courses might be outside of theater and dance a
Yep.
semester, but some people, we have some freshmen starting this year who have like sophomore standing already because of
Right.
AP credits or IB. Um, so that depends on what the student is coming in with. But it is possible to double major in many things. It involves discussions with academic advising because some degrees are more credit heavy than others.
Hmm.
Um, but most of our students also have a minor. ASL is really popular with our students because it's made such an impact on theater over the last 20
Hmm.
years. So that one is very common. Education. There's also a 5-year program where you can get a master's in education um, because in New York you have to have a master's to teach.
Yep.
And so for people who want that, that is a 5th year and takes some finagling, but that is doable as well.
Super cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little more about. You mentioned the I think it was sophomore year class that you start some
Mhm.
of that business prep. How does the launch into the business work for seniors and beyond? I know you've now graduated yourself. Now only maybe one class of
Yeah.
seniors from the beginning, but how does
Yeah.
it work in terms of their introduction to agents and managers and sort of beginning their careers?
Sure. Well, I mean, everyone talks about how showcases have changed so much since COVID, when everybody had to sort of rethink what they were doing. Years ago, there was a New York showcase. When I came in, there wasn't anything, and I said, "Well, let's not rush to something." And so this year, we're bringing showcase back. It'll
Yep.
be a combined showcase for music theater and acting,
Yep.
with a portfolio option for our design tech BFAs, and it'll be here and filmed and edited, so all of the students have all of that material. Um, but my thing is, like, the cost of a New York showcase is huge, and
Yep.
if 6 of 10 graduates are going to New York City and 3 are staying in Buffalo and one's going to Chicago, that's a
Yep.
lot of money to put out. So in order to give the students options based on where they are going, we thought that this was the best way to do that. So we're
To have
excited to
video.
bring that back this year.
And
Also,
is that about right in terms of the proportion of, if of 20 some students who are graduating,
mhm.
are 2/3 going to New York? Is you said I'm
you know,
trying to do your math there.
we're the largest public university in New York State, so
Yeah.
we're like the flagship SUNY school, and because the population center in New York State is New York City, Long Island, Hudson Valley,
Yeah.
a majority or plurality of our students are from the city,
Yep.
essentially, right? We do bigs and littles, and we were like, well, these two are from the Bronx, so let's put them together. Like,
Uh-huh.
so it's unique because I didn't expect this coming in, but our students have such an awareness of New York City as a place, and
Yep.
many of them theater in New York City, that sort of preparation that is required for people who don't have that. We don't really need to do that. They're all
Yep.
there on their breaks, and the
Yep.
Amtrak goes right there. So there's this sort of different perspective. They're really looking at, I would say, half probably go to New York City.
Yep.
Buffalo has a lot of small professional theater in it also, and that's something we've changed also. We're working in partnership with a lot of companies here to get the students working while they are enrolled. We had to kind of explain why that was important to
Yep.
for some of the the rule makers here. But it gets them out, it gets them working with other people, it gets them understanding the schedule.
Yep.
Academic schedules are so, stretched out, and no one has that much time in real life to do a show.
Yep.
Um, so a lot of students will choose to stay here for a year or two. We have no, he's a junior. He's booked till like the end of next summer already
Uh-huh.
because he's in such demand here, and that's great because he can make money
That's
um,
cool.
while
Yep.
he's in school here. So it's unique because of they're already New York City aware to a
Yep.
large extent.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting to hear about some of the sort of shifts that you are making with the program. I know now over a decade it's old, this information, but when I worked at Hudson Valley for a number of years, Hudson Valley Shakespeare
Mhm.
Festival, that is, a couple SUNY Buffalo kids came and worked there, and definitely I think they felt like a little bit like they felt a little green. You said outside the box in a great way, but also
Mhm.
they felt a little bit like, oh gosh, I didn't know all this stuff. I didn't know any of the
Yeah,
business stuff as much,
yeah,
and it seems like that's something you're trying to adjust a little more to be like, let's
yeah.
up this readiness of what the business is.
Right. And so in workshop in sophomore year, there's 10 mock auditions over the course of the semester. They get it 48 hours before they come in, they do it. And most of those I have a guest director or an agent from New York City come in for those. So we're
Yep.
starting that exposure in sophomore year. And anytime
Yep.
there's a guest, the rest of the students are welcome to come into that class.
Yep.
But that just drop them in, throw them in the pool and and they will
That's
learn
smart.
so
That's how
much.
you learn.
Yeah, and bringing in summer stocks, really really pushing the summer stock aspect of this because
Totally.
again, it's not even just for me and I was able to work for basically 20 years,
Yep.
without any significant pauses because of who I met in networks. And if you
Yeah.
don't start working at this point, you're not going to graduate with those networks.
It's so well said, and also I think it's so hard if your first real professional job happens after you graduate. Like
Mhm.
when you're hitting the ground running, and you're like, I'm learning some of the things that you might want to learn your
Yeah.
sophomore year in summer stuff. Just getting those bits of experience of like, right, this is how I show up to rehearsal and be a professional, and all some of those
Mhm.
things that you just need
Right.
some little practice at, little runs at actually doing. Tell me a little bit about outside of the theater program. What is SUNY Buffalo just as a university experience? When we talk about campus life, when we talk about like, what will my experience as a student be?
Yeah, it is. Again, I think it's 32,000 students. I don't know exactly that. Um, it is a large state school that has everything. There are three campuses. We are all like on the North Campus, which is in a northern suburb of Buffalo, and it's very self-contained for a big school. It is very
Yeah.
self-contained. There's a downtown campus that's the medical school, and the South Campus, which is in the city of Buffalo, which has like this School of Architecture. I don't know what else is there. I think
Yeah.
I've literally been in a building there once. Um, so you can have this big school experience. There's like 500 clubs. There's a club for everything. Students can
Yeah.
start clubs. Um, and you can be isolated and on the campus, or you can go and live in the city. So it's a really nice sort of best of both worlds option if you want a campus life or
Yep.
to like rent a house and live in the cool part of town.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about cost. I think you kind of mentioned
Mhm.
a lot of your students. I bet a significant percentage are New York State residents to get that
Mhm.
wonderful tuition. Right. For non-residents, we found it's about 32,000, but for residents, it's 11,000. Is that true?
Yeah, that's tuition and fees, not including room and board, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. We let them figure out their own room and
That's
board.
yeah,
We didn't
that's
do
for
too
later.
much. But how does that work in terms of what the requirements of being in New York? It's only for New York State who get that 11,000. And you mentioned a little bit about like the idea of hey, potential
Correct.
scholarships that could be coming in for out of state people. So I guess how does it work in terms of negotiating that scholarship down? How are there any ways to get resident tuition for people who aren't residents? How does that work for scholarship offers?
As I understand it, if you live here a year after college, like if you took a gap year and lived in the state, you could
Hmm.
qualify for resident
Hmm.
tuition.
Yep.
But I think that's the only way to do that. But the school, we have a new dean in our college, and we have new directors of admissions for international and domestic admissions, and so there's been a big push to give more access to out of state students, and we have
Yep.
a record number of out of state students coming this year because of more money being
Yep.
moved to those populations, which is really wonderful. We used to mostly focus on in-state because we knew that there wasn't money for out of state. And so why would we put all of our eggs in those baskets? But now, particularly with this double major option, we're seeing a lot more interest, and
Yep.
Students have successfully lobbied for more money. We don't really have any say over that. That all goes through admissions and other offices, and we don't have performance-based scholarships in our
Yep. So
program.
it's merit, meaning academic money
Yeah,
that they're coming in with,
yeah,
and then seems like some help that's more for out of state tuition or out of state students
yeah,
specifically.
a significant amount.
Yep.
And there has been talk, this is not official, there has been talk about doing a match if you have, for example, if you're from Michigan and you are
Yep.
accepted to the University of Michigan,
Yep.
um, we can match that in-state tuition.
Uh-huh.
So, but
Interesting.
that is, it takes a long, it's like, they say everything here, every change is like turning a cruise ship, right? You
Yep.
can't just like, you can't just do something. It takes
Yep.
2 years to implement
And
it.
sometimes you just hit the iceberg and you never make the turn.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it. All right, well, that's getting us into some recruiting stuff. So let's take a
sure.
break. In the back end, I want to talk a little bit about some of the new recruiting stuff that you're doing as well. So we're back in a flash.
Great.
All right, we are back with James Beaudry, and we're talking a little bit about the audition and the admission process for SUNY Buffalo. So we're starting to get into it. So I think some of this out-of-state tuition allows some more out-of-state recruiting. So it seems like
Yeah.
I know some of the places that you're going to that are, we talk about a Pittsburgh Unifieds. It looks like
Mhm.
we're hitting up different, coming to New York City Unified. Sounds like that's something that you've done in the past. But I'd love to kind of hear about like what does your year look like in terms of where you will see students from different regional stuff on campus, online. What does that look like in terms of the overall year?
Sure. We're only going to Pittsburgh in terms of the various unifieds.
Yep.
We had a really great experience there last year. We felt it was really well run, and we're excited to go back. We do our own New York City audition.
Right.
Um, Again, because there's a lot of money if you are a New York student. If depending on your family's adjusted gross income, you can go to school for free with the
Yep.
right GPA. And so we want to give as much access as possible to that. So we're really connecting with the performing arts high schools in New York City a lot more
Yep.
than we have before, and doing our own auditions at Pearl Studios or Ripley Greer, wherever we get space.
Yep.
Um, and that has been hugely attended. And you don't have to be a New York resident to go to that. We're trying to keep it around the time of the New York Unified. So if people are already there, they can
And
two birds, one
oddly,
stone.
in our parlance, we still we call that you doing New York City Unified. Even if you're tagging along, if
Right.
you're part of it, you're around it too. For our students' sake, because they get confused if Pittsburgh Unified is something they pay, they join and do.
Right.
But with New York Unifieds in general, that's what the schools do. So they're like, if you're
Right.
there in January, I'll check you out. I'll be at
Yeah.
SUNY Buffalo.
Yeah. So they used to go to Chicago. We may bring that back, but
Mhm.
we'll see where we are with numbers.
Yep.
And then we have I think we're doing 3 on campus
Yep.
this year for acting and music theater, and then 4 for dance.
Love it. And any online, or do you have any option to do
Yeah,
online?
through the accepted platform, we accept video auditions. We will probably follow up with a Zoom interview just to get to
Uh-huh.
know you because that's so important. Um,
But for the online audition, it would be a pre-recorded video. It's not that you're hosting Zoom auditions for
yeah,
them.
it's basically what everyone else does for pre-screens, but we don't do
Yeah.
pre-screens.
Yeah.
If
You
like
do
we're
it.
looking at it and we like you, I think
And then it would become a pre-screen because then you're going to call them back with a Zoom, maybe, right?
exactly. And if we need to see something else, we'll ask for it. But in general, it's a get to know you, to know like
Yeah.
who are you and will you be a good fit for us? But we
Yep.
really encourage people to visit if they can.
Yep. And do you get a sense of, I mean, again, you only share the numbers that you feel comfortable with. This is truly up to you. But do you have a sense of how many total students you will see in a given year and how many of those students that will end up getting a yes from you? Like, do you have a sense of like, what are we talking about when we talk about what the audition experience is and then what that cut down becomes?
This is tricky to sort of put. Things have changed very much in my 3 years of recruiting.
Yep.
Now that I'm the director of undergraduate studies, I have a lot more say in how things go. But there was a real like lack of recruiting for my first year and a half here, and so we were seeing mostly in-state people, a couple of out-of-state people, and pretty much
Yep.
on campus. And
Yep.
so those numbers skyrocketed last year. So we don't have a formula yet. I
Yep.
think by next year we will. But what we do know is that when students come here and visit and we can take time with them, they like us. Um, as far as, accepting people, I would say of the number that we accepted last year, 10% came here,
End up yielding. Yep.
you know, and for a program that no one had heard of, I mean, they had heard of it previously and then it dropped off the map. Um, we feel like that rebuilding is really good. And
It's great.
looking ahead, we will probably be more discerning.
Right. The higher the
Because
percentage you start yielding, the fewer people you have to start accepting. But
exactly.
to the
So
point of then having to have bigger classes. Yeah.
this is the math that they don't cover in theater school, but like we want to make sure that when the students arrive,
Yeah.
they have the skills to succeed and
Yep.
logically move into this career. Like that's the question we ask. Like if you can this person work in 4 years?
Mhm.
Really it comes down to that, and then are our numbers at a level that we can manage so everyone's getting individual attention in performance
Yep.
classes, because that's essential.
Yep. And then let's talk about how we determine that in the audition room. So
Mhm.
when you're at, obviously, let's take the PUAs aside, the more consortium style thing. But when you're at New York City, you're in Pearl Studios, or when you're on campus, when they're performing the material, what kind of judgment are you making from the material in terms of, is this person prepared to succeed? And then how does that work with interviews and adjustments and questions you might ask that goes beyond? So what are you kind of sniffing for, and what are you detecting as you're looking at the auditions?
Yeah, there's the basics, right? Like, is the monologue memorized? Are you singing in the correct key?
Hmm.
Um, all of that. And then what I'm really interested in is, are you physically embodied? Are you or are you frozen and speaking?
Hmm.
And are you connecting to the space? A lot of our students, a lot of people come in and say, "Do you teach Meisner here?" As though like that's the be all end all of musical theater training.
Hmm.
It's only because that's the name that they have heard. And
Hmm.
this is not because I studied at the Strasberg Institute that I'm saying this. It's just that like, I see this like, still directing professionally over the summers. I see students coming out of schools and they act the entire scene staring at their scene partner
Uh-huh.
in the face. And like,
Uh-huh.
fine if you're filming an episode for television when the camera can do the movement and
Yeah.
you need to hit your marks, but that's not how you perform in space.
Yeah.
Um, so most of our adjustments are, can we get you to a natural, authentic, believable, embodied
Hmm.
place where you are not just connecting with a scene partner, but in a monologue, you don't have that. Are you connecting with the space?
Hmm.
Are you, and then who are you and what do you want from this
Hmm.
career, and do we think you can manage that? But it's amazing to me how difficult it is to get people to be in their bodies and break out of what they have rehearsed.
It's so well said, and I'm surprised how rarely I hear that answer 200 episodes in. We talk about so talent in so many ways is so hard to define. We talk about acting talent, right? Singing and
Mhm.
dance, we have maybe a little bit more
Right.
objective metrics, but I do think when I talk about adjustments, people talk about the flexibility, and maybe sometimes they mean a version of physical connectedness, but so
Yeah.
often I'm like that is what you're trying to see, is like, can we be in your body and in your spirit and have those things be aligned with
Right.
each other? Yeah,
Right. And
it's
and
well said.
there was a student at Pittsburgh last year. I was sitting next to Jenny Lamb, who teaches at Penn State, who's a friend of mine, and she teaches physical theater. So we're both very much on the same page with this. And this
Hmm.
student came out and was grounded and breathing and like
Hmm.
multiple targets in the space. And we just looked at each other like,
Yes.
it's happening.
Yeah.
I have no idea
It
who that student was, but congratulations to whoever they were.
So much of it doesn't necessarily mean the student can't do it just because they can't do it in an audition, right? Sometimes it is the
Right.
nerves that then go, "Okay, everything's tight and I'm squeezing, and so then now I'm not able
Yeah.
to be physically free." But it doesn't mean they can't do it in a show, and they're like, when I'm having fun, I'm great at it."
Yeah.
But
And I think, people worry so much about like my monologue and what I'm going to do. And it's like, the words don't really matter. What you do with
right.
them matters. And
It's so true.
and and we want to see you do more than you've rehearsed. So really that's what
Yeah.
it's about in our callbacks.
I remember I used to lead a class by saying, "Hey, you could get into the school with the phone book. If you do it well enough, you could be reading the
Yes.
phone book." Well, and be like, "That's not true." I'm like, "Well, that's an extreme example, but you could. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
right kid could do it." All right, we're going on beautiful tangents. I want to talk a little bit about if you like a student artistically,
Mhm.
and a great example, something like PUA, where artistically you might be the primary version of seeing them first. What is needed then academically? Is it about a minimum GPA? Is it a conversation between you and admissions? How does that work in terms of the academic side of things?
Great question. It's extremely separate. So, and we have a great relationship with admissions, and we are emailing all the time because we have
Yep.
our lists and they have their lists. And it's like, we have accepted these people have applied, these people have been accepted, these have not. So then we
Mm-hmm.
know, like, okay, stop emailing that person. They haven't been accepted to the university.
Uh-huh.
Um, it is, like Binghamton and UB are like the more rigorous academic SUNY schools.
Yep. And do you have a sense of what about that means rigor-wise? Like, what are we talking about in terms of a GPA or a test score if we're setting those in?
I don't know about GPAs. I don't know. But I will
So you're
say
allowed to not know. We can make them look it up. Yeah.
it's more rigorous. We're like a top 30 public university
Mm-hmm.
right now. The goal is to be top 25. But so you have to get into the university, and we don't
Yep.
really have sway on that.
Yep.
Once you're in, if there's terms of financial aid, we can send a note, which has
Yep.
worked sometimes and not worked other times.
Yep.
And then if you apply to the university before you audition for us, we do have a great BA option, so you can
Yep.
still be involved, and anyone can audition. Our shows are open to anyone. And in music theater, if there are open slots in a course, I will let other students in.
Uh-huh. From the BA.
They have to audition. I mean, like, you can't take a singing class if you can't read music. You know what I
Yep.
mean? You have to have the certain skill sets, but um as our numbers in enrollment go up, that will probably become more and more rare, but there are options.
And do you interact with any part of the academic application? So do you read essays? Do you read letters of recommendation? Is there any part of it that you look at, or are you just looking at the audition?
Sure. So part of our audition process and the registration is a personal statement
Mm-hmm.
about your career and two letters of recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
If we've seen you at somewhere else, you can bypass that. I read them all.
Yep.
And there are times when sometimes that gets somebody in.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes that's the difference. And we've reached out to people who are writing letters of recommendation for
Uh-huh.
information. We're like, we like this person, we are concerned about
Mm-hmm.
something. What's your experience with them? And then that can, not everybody, some people come in, you're like, yeah, amazing, great.
Yep.
But they're important. And the statement specifically, because I want to know that you're a person. I
Yep.
want to know that you're a person who has thoughts and a point of view.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and as you're sort of filling out your class, and I know these are ever-changing numbers as things
mhm,
keep shifting for you, but what are you thinking about in terms of diversity of like, it sounds like more geographical diversity you're looking for. I
mhm.
mean, are you thinking about stuff like gender diversity and height diversity and racial diversity, size balance, right? Are you thinking about diversity of stuff like ability, both in terms of like diversity ability as we sometimes talk about it, but also diversity of like, singing, dancing, acting? Does that matter to you? How do you think about the group of 20 to 30 people that you're putting together and how they interact together?
Yeah, I mean, we do and we don't in different ways. As no one's going to be rejected because they have the same height, hair color, gender as someone else that we've accepted, right?
Right.
Um, we have a fairly, like, quite a diverse population within our program,
Hmm.
which is great. We want to maintain that. It's not something that we've had to actively, like, do
You're
anything
not
about.
seeking a certain identity type to go, I have to fit this in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's always the question of, like, are you choosing your season based on the show or based on the humans you have? And
Hmm.
it can be difficult within that. So I would be lying if I said we weren't like, oh, this is great because we want to do a chorus line in 2 years, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, but if we don't have the bodies for a chorus line, we won't do a chorus line,
Yep.
right? So Agnes DeMille had this quote about, I bring in my dancers and then I dream based on my dancers, and I love
Hmm.
it. That's not what she said at all. I'm paraphrasing
Yeah.
tremendously, but
Hey, it's not about the monologue, it's what you do with it.
right. And I think particularly in education, right, there's if you can look past the sort of like, well, this is what we want to put out into the world about our
Hmm.
program, and focus on, well, who do we have here, and
Hmm.
how can we give them the best experience and prepare them for things that they will logically be cast in
Hmm.
while expanding their capabilities. So if they don't fit
Yeah.
into a mold, they can break it. But and that's one of the reasons I like the personal statements, because I want
Yeah.
to know, do you want to go be chorus person number 3 in an old school song and dance musical. Great,
Yep.
we can help you with that. Or do
Yep.
you want to, you know, change how everybody views some aspect of your identity as a person as it's represented in music theater? Also great, you know.
Yep. I love that. It's something I encourage so many of our students to do when they're looking at their school list to kind of come up with like, what is your mission statement for the process? What are you
Mhm.
looking for in a school? And I was like, it's about shaping your list, but it also will be so helpful for you in then meeting the schools and saying, this is the kind of person I am, this is the kind of education I want, this is who I want to ultimately be 10 years from now. That like
Yeah.
having a sense of that is really attractive to schools.
Again, I like live with quotes in my head, and I don't know who said them, but like something I say in my meet and greets when I'm directing is like, the show has the biggest ego in the room. The
Hmm.
same thing in an educational program.
Hmm.
The success of the student has to have the biggest ego.
That's a James Beaudry quote. Is that
It is
you're
now.
taking that? Well, it is now.
Yeah.
And someone else before you have weighed this. Weighed this. I'd love to talk a little bit. We're talking about the finances of affording tuition.
Mhm.
I think that you may be. I'm trying to remember if we've talked to other state universities since the U Arts of it all. Since the Arts of it all, we've
Mhm.
been talking through. Schools' finances, and if parents are worried about schools' finances, how does that work with state funding? I mean, is that something students should be concerned about? Is SUNY Buffalo going to be around 10 years from now?
I Yes, I feel very lucky to teach at the largest public university in a state like New York
Hmm.
because and our governor is from Buffalo, so, we serve at the will of the governor in the state
Hmm.
university system. Um, and so there's a ton of support here. They're investing like $1 billion in a new AI center in
Do
partnership
you mean
with
actually $1 billion, or is a billion just a number?
a billion. Like,
Oh my god,
yeah,
that's so much money.
there's like 500,000 here and 500,000 here. I mean, 500 million. But it's not just, I mean, that's with Cornell and Columbia and
Yeah,
NYU. It's just that there's so many reasons. But like, this is a climate haven also. Like, as global
uh-huh.
warming happens, the Buffalo Niagara region is one of the like best positioned places to live,
A
apparently.
tropical paradise very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and we have the land and all of that, but there's a huge engineering school, there's a huge medical school here. So we in the arts, historically don't get money. So as we
Mhm,
look at like research funding being cut and all of that, it's like the joke when COVID hit that my friends would say, well, we've been practicing for unemployment our whole life.
mhm.
Um, but in the arts, we've been practicing for funding cuts all our lives too.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's we are solvent, and I'm not terribly worried,
Yep,
particularly because our interest continues to grow.
yep.
I think if I were in other programs, I might be more worried about that. But because we are the largest university, I feel like if cuts happen, it won't be
It
here
won't be,
first.
yeah. You just have to have the least nice looking bike on the rack, right? That says, make sure someone else steals the bike next to you. That's what I try to do. I make it look a little
Yeah,
bit worse so
yeah.
that you still. What about, let's wrap with advice for parents in this process. So we have a lot of parent listeners who are listening with their kids, for their kids in some cases, but what would you advise to parents who are listening in terms of how they can best guide their kids through this process in general? Certainly anything with SUNY Buffalo specifically, but just in general, how they can best sort of help their kids.
I think listen to them and encourage them, but honestly, you
Mhm,
know. Um, I have met with parents and students a lot. We do a lot of Zoom meetings and things like that. And there are parents who want things that I can tell the students don't want
mhm,
sometimes, and that's really important. I'm never going to tell somebody to come to this school if it doesn't seem like it's the school for them.
mhm,
You got to go where you want to go. I don't. I mean, I care about them as humans, but like I don't care if you come here. I
mhm,
want to work with people who want to work. My mom was a guidance counselor and went to UB. And
mhm,
when I was going to college, when I was looking at colleges, she said, "Don't go to a large state school; you'll be a number." So I tell all
mhm,
of them that because in our department, you're not a number,
mhm,
um, but it's a big university, so you have all of that access. But like, look beyond what the program is saying about itself to what the students feel to how you
mhm,
feel in the classrooms. Another parent last year, the her daughter's coming here this year, said this was so refreshing because you go so many places and everyone's on and you feel like, oh, we've got to prove something. And
mhm,
here it felt like you all were trying to prove to us that you can teach, that you know
mhm,
what to do. And I appreciated that feedback. And I think it's really real. Like you are the
mhm.
shopper
Yeah.
You don't have to
That's so
prove anything to anybody. And if they need you to, you may not want to be there.
I always say that is a lesson that they all learn in March of their process. I'm like, I'm telling it to
Yeah.
you now. You are the ones who are shopping. You're gonna have multiple options.
Yeah.
They're gonna be recruiting you at the end of it. But you don't know which ones yet will be the ones buying for your money, but it's gonna be the case that you're
Right.
gonna have choices.
Right.
I think there's so much fear going into the process,
Hmm.
which I think some of that's from listening to each other, and some of it's just from the overwhelm of the process in general. They just look like, oh my God, how do I do this? And no one's ever gonna like me. It's not gonna be me who gets in or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they're
Well, and
shocked when it happens and they have the choices.
I, I did interview at another school before I got this job.
Oh, you
Um,
lied to us. You said you were 1 for 1. Oh
well,
my
this
gosh.
was the first interview I had, and then there was another one, and then I got this job.
Oh, I see. 1, then 2. Okay.
Um, and when I went to meet the students, they were terrified
Mhm.
because they didn't know who was going to come in. And I
Mhm.
realized they had no confidence in their own ability, in their own technique.
Mhm.
They felt like, we need you to come in and continue this program moving forward so we can get jobs.
Hmm.
And I was like, but you're the one who gets the
You're the one getting the
job,
job.
and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
should be obsolete in 4 years. If you
Yeah.
still need me in 4 years, I haven't
Yeah,
done my
yeah,
job as a teacher.
yeah,
So think about that also. Don't let what they say about the industry be the only thing.
yeah.
Are those The industry is in all of our learning outcomes in every class. There's something about the
Mhm.
industry. So
Mhm.
we're starting in the beginning. In music theory, there's something about the industry in that, right?
Mhm.
The whole thing is leading to the industry, and the showcase is the cherry on top. But
Mhm.
it's so much bigger than that. And so make sure that the courses that are being offered are valuable and meaningful.
I love it. All right, it's a great place to wrap. If people want more information on SUNY Buffalo, do we like them going to with social media? We have a UB. What is this? Somewhere had you pulled up?
There's so many.
UB Music Theater seems like that's a social place for us. Do
Yeah.
we like going to the website themselves? Do you like people texting you? How do you like to people to find out more
You
information?
can reach out to me however you want. To find us, theaterdance.buffalo.edu. It will get you to our website the fastest, or you can go to buffalo.edu and find us.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, we have UB Theater Dance, UB Music Theater on that platform. We're not on TikTok at this point, but we
Nor
have
should
other
you ever
things to
be.
do.
Nor need you ever
Um,
be.
or email me. You can find my email through the links in our Instagram. Reach out anytime. Happy to answer questions or anything like that. You can
I
also
love it.
find out all of the curricular plans about double majors and things like that on our website.
I love it. James, thanks so much for the time today. It
Thank
was so
you.
fun to get to know you. Yes, yes, yes. I really hope you enjoyed that interview with James. What a nice guy, and some really good information in there. Before I do the takeaways, we'll just do that little quick hitter. I just want to re-emphasize. I gave that little definition in the interview itself when we were talking about New York Unified specifically and their participation. I do think it's worth hearing a few different times the difference between like participating in unifieds versus them being there and tagging along to unifieds, right? Leo actually just did a nice video on this for Instagram. If you're not following us at Musical Theater College Auditions, please do check us out. But he kind of went through the differences between the schools participating and then your participation when you're talking about National City Unifieds, which, those are for everyone. Everyone can do the New York, Chicago, LA National City Unifieds versus, those individual regional consortium auditions, whether that's Pittsburgh Unifieds, Marcus, Moonifieds, Drunifieds, any of those schools where, or not schools, any of those programs where you're paying a fee and like participating in all of them. When you talk about New York, Chicago, LA, the schools are the one doing the participation and you are signing up individually with schools. So you actually don't care if the school is part of the official unifieds or if they're across the street at Ripley Greer instead of being at Pearl, if they're across the street from the Palmer House, whatever it is. As long as they're in that city and doing auditions, you're signing up individually with the schools. That confusion happens every single year, so it can't hurt to say it a couple different times. Okay, a few bigger, more artistic takeaways. I really loved that conversation about physical freedom and what the goal is in that physical freedom. Different people have said it different ways, but I appreciated the way James said that. I thought it was an interesting perspective on kind of what you could be looking for when you talk about like acting talent, which I think is so ineffable. It's we often talk about with like adjustments. Are you being flexible? But sometimes it's not just about the extent to which you're like intellectually flexible, you're intellectually making those changes. Though, of course, that's great too. We like to see that you're able to make different vocal changes. But sometimes it's just literally about the physical freedom in the instrument and how much tension there is in the body, right? James talked about often you can just like someone walks on stage and you just know they are living and breathing in their body before they even say a thing, right? And then you feel like that student, that person is flexible, even though you're still on the first take of the monologue, but you just feel if I push this person, they're going to bend like a willow instead of, I don't know, cracking like an oak or whatever it is, or being too stiff, right? And again, this is not just about physical freedom and this takeaway. And, I've said this a million times in a million different ways that you've heard in different takeaways on the podcast. I just said it to our students who just did the mock when we're doing our little debrief. But, it is really about the people and not the performances. Colleges are not accepting the 20 best performances that they see on a numerical basis. That's just not what the process is or how it works. Like we talked about with monologues and that like phone book example, it's not about the material you pick and it's not about the people with the smartest material are going to go book the school. I'm really not kidding about that phone book example. It's of course a ridiculous example, right? The song equivalent would be like the right kid walking in and singing happy birthday. Like neither of those are recommended ideas. I don't think any of you should go read the phone book or sing happy birthday. But if the right raw talent walked in the room and they were so exemplary and that was the only piece that they had, schools would absolutely choose that human being and see that person through their material, through their poor material choice, rather than overly focusing on the material itself. And I know that is so frustrating to hear when we spend so much time talking about like smart material choice and what material choice can do for you. I totally understand that. Material choice is important. It can make a huge difference in people's processes, but it is about what the material brings out in you because the colleges are accepting you, the person, and not your piece, right? It's about the human being and not the performances. So, we have to do all that work. We have to think about the material that is important. But then at the end of the day, before you walk in the room, we have to be thinking about what is the human being that I'm bringing into the room. And that's where we talk about so much that psychological stuff. That's why so much of the podcast, especially as we get into those prime audition months, is about the psychological, because the human being you're bringing into the room is as important as the work you're bringing in the room. They're both important. It's not only the human being, but it is really important. What is that human being and how do they walk into the room? And I don't think that is a static choice. It's not like you are who you are. You get to decide which version of yourself you bring in the room. And there's a lot of different Charlies. There's a version of Charlie who's pretty tight, and there's a version of Charlie who's pretty loose. And me making the choice of which Charlie I bring in the room can really make the difference for me. Okay, and then I really like that conversation about personal statement as well. You know, really, you hear all the whole spectrum of sort of how people talk about what do they read the essays at all? Do they read one of the essays, maybe just the supplements? Do they read the Common App essay? Do they read the letters of recommendations? It's interesting. James said he does read everything, at least the personal statements and letters of rec. We've heard the whole thing, right? You've people who really do say they read it, and people who say they don't read anything or read parts of it. I am a bit skeptical that I think people tend to overreport how much they actually read them. I think it's a little like voting where like more people will say they vote than actually do vote, right? But just another good reason to have everything in your package that you feel good about, or you feel good enough about, that if someone were to read it, you'd feel like it were a good representation of you. It were a good representation. It was a good representation of you. And specifically with the personal statement, this was kind of the reasoning for this takeaway. I really like the idea of putting some thought into it. Not because the written personal statement is so important for this school or that. I mean, some schools maybe it is, but for most schools, it's not going to be hugely important on a numerical basis. But because the process of putting thought into the personal statement, when you think about what it will do for your process to have a strongly defined sense of your own artistry and your own goals, even if those goals are ever shifting, they don't have to be correct or like these are the right goals. But if you've really thought it and put some thought into your artistry, it's really helpful for you. And from the school's perspective, it's not what they're looking for in those personal statements. It's not necessarily about like how good the personal statement is. It's not like, is this essay written beautifully 9 out of 10? But, and again, sorry, not to say that that couldn't be something that's really cool. If you're somebody who goes, I do write really well, nothing wrong with show me a really beautifully written essay, right? But many of you, if you're not, the next coming of Shakespeare, and it's not going to be that this piece is so well written, show me that you've put some thought into this conversation, and it'll be the same stuff you're asked at interviews. It'll be the same process of getting to know you, right? Show me where you're wrestling with those questions about, James Benjamin identity, about your artistry, about your humanity, about your goals for your life. Show me that stuff, right? Tell me about your dreams and give me a window into you as an artist. That can be so much more interesting than like a well curated or well written essay. Not that for some schools, a well written essay can't help you, but especially when you talk about those supplements or those personal statements, I really think the more all of it, the more you can put into it, but especially those, the more it's really about the thought you put into it as opposed to like the beauty of the written word. And the last thing, you will not be shocked to hear me want to do a takeaway on this when James talked about parents wanting things for their kids that they might not want for themselves. Um, I really like that idea. I like the way James put it about like listening to your kids and supporting them honestly. I think he said, listen to them and then support them, or but do so honestly with the student you have in front of you. It really dovetails into our takeaway from the last episode, which was about like listening more deeply. I know not all of you listen to the artist episodes. Of course, you don't also listen in order. Nothing wrong with that. But our last artist episode was with Conrad Ricamora. And my takeaway was really about listening more deeply, especially within like difficult or heated conversations, whether it's a political conversation, a controversial topic in those cases. That's what we're talking about there. But whatever it is, that idea of how can you listen deeply, right? Not just to what the person's saying, but what the person is really saying and the person's humanity behind that statement. I think that really applies for parents too. You need to listen to your child, but not just listen to your child. You need to like really listen to your child. Like listen to that human being with all of your senses, right? Really see that kid. Who is this actual kid who's in front of you, right? And especially if their wants in a program differ from your own wants, you want to listen to like where is that coming from? It's not just what they're saying, but where's that coming from? That doesn't mean, in my opinion, that you need to just like lie down and just do exactly what your kid wants in every situation. Of course, I don't think that way, right? I absolutely think you can add in your own personal viewpoint. You can add in your own wisdom of your years of experience, and then also needs for your family and what those could be, right? Especially when we talk about financial needs, right? Maybe they think they know the BFA world, the conservatory world, the artistic world better than you, and maybe they do better than you. But maybe you feel like as a parent, I know the real world, and I understand finances in a different way than you understand, and I want to have that conversation, right? I think totally okay to share those perspectives, set boundaries, push back on your child in those moments, right? Have your own goals for what your child's collegiate experience can be. There's nothing wrong with that. Especially I've heard of lots of different contexts in which parents have really strong opinions and feel they know better than their kid, whether that's, I mentioned finances, when you talk about safety, geography, the size of school, any of those big questions, you go, I might have a perspective of my child and my child might be unrealistic. Nothing wrong with thinking that. But I do think that idea of like really listening and seeing and understanding who that human being is in front of you is really important. And I don't just mean, who they are, but like their soul and their essence and their skill set and the whole person of that human being. I'm going to use my dad as an example here and be a little vulnerable for you. I got to see this firsthand with my younger brother. I have a much younger half brother who's almost a decade younger than me. And I would watch my dad talk about all of the things my brother needed to be and wasn't, right? He should be a leader. He needs to just get himself out there and try. And, he's so smart. So he should take these kind of classes. He needs to pursue this college and pursue it in this way. And here's how his application has to look. And he had so many opinions. And I think part of it was like my dad was so genuinely excited that one of his kids was pursuing something close to his own field. Of course, I went into acting. My dad is a science professor, he's a scientist, and my little brother was going into computer science. So, they're both at least very similar in that nerdy world, right? And as is so often the case with parents when they're maybe over helping, he wanted to help my brother avoid the mistakes that he made personally, right? And maybe try to be all the things that he wished he could have been as a young person going into a similar field. But I would say to him often, and I would try to say it as gently as I could, I'm not sure you're seeing the remarkable young man who's actually in front of you. You do have a wonderful son, but he's not all of those things that you just said. Like he is a back at the classroom kind of kid, right? And he may find his way, say this at 18, maybe he would find his way toward some success in those areas. And actually he has now as he's blossomed into his 30s, but he was not one hard push away from being comfortable in the spotlight. That was not who that human being was. And until my dad really understood that, it was hard for him to really be a supportive father to the child that he actually had, right? And I see this with our students and families so many times over the 2 decades I've been doing this now, right? So often I will feel as a coach, you actually do have a remarkable daughter. You do have a really talented child with remarkable performing abilities, but it's not conforming to the idea you have in your head about what that's supposed to be, right? And while there's that dissonance, while there's that mismatch there, it's really hard for that kid to fully blossom and become their full selves, especially in front of you, right? In this process, right? Doesn't mean that they're maybe blossoming and becoming that almost regardless of your feelings. And then you two have to reconcile that because while they're in front of you, it's hard for them to be the full artist that they're becoming because you think it should be this and they should think it should be this. And in those cases, you go, you got to listen to that kid and what that artist actually is, right? And honestly, that is more of an observation than advice, because this stuff over the years I've seen, it basically works itself out every time in time, right? I watch parents realize through this process, through watching them go through it, right? They're going to learn and they're going to see the children in front of them. They're going to meet the young adults who are blossoming into full adulthood, even if maybe their coaches kind of sometimes see it a little bit before the parents see it, right? That will happen naturally. I mean, it is the rare parent. I won't say it's 100% of cases, but it is the rare parent who's going to stay obstinate and insistent throughout this process as their child is sort of becoming who they're becoming. But I guess there's so many things. The sooner you can listen, the sooner you can realize, you're going to save yourself a little bit of pain, and it's going to make the process just go a little bit smoother for you. And that will do it for another episode of Mapping the College Audition, produced by Meghan, Cordier, and Kelly Prendergast, with social media work by Jordan Rice. Please, for the love of all that is holy, follow us on Instagram at Mapping the College Audition. Don't make me beg for it. And like and subscribe us wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, thank you for those wonderful ratings and reviews you've been putting in. We really appreciate it. Make me do a little bit more accent work. I can always use a little accent dialect work. Why not? Carnegie or Carnegie? It's up to you. And you can check us out at MTCA.com for all of your individual college prep needs and to see more information about all those events I was talking about in the intro. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, please trust that you're enough for the right program exactly as you are right now. Now keep striving. We'll catch you next week.